Years ago, I purchased my first yellow inflatable kayak. I mean, the thing is pretty amazing. It bounces off all the rocks. Looks like Big Bird floating down the river. And once I got it out there, I just thought, from the moment I first got it on the river, I thought, I am so looking forward to the day that my kids are old enough that I could take them on the river. And sure enough, last Friday, it happened for the first time. I'd been waiting for that moment for a long time. And one of the things that I was most excited about in taking them on the river is I've been praying for my kids for some time that the faith that I treasure, the Jesus that I know, would become their own. That's been a long time prayer, as many of you have prayed for your children and are also praying for your grandchildren, because we know that God has no grandchildren. And as much as we would love to pass our faith down to our kids, it has to be their own. We're involved in the process. We have a part to play, but it has to become their own. So that's something that's been heavy on my heart. I think even more in the past months and years, and it's been something that I have been praying for. So that morning, knowing that this adventure was coming, I prayed specifically for an opportunity to talk about my faith with my kids. As I was imagining what this was going to look like, here we are, we're going to be floating down the river in the middle of God's creation, the perfect opportunity for me to talk about how great God is and how thankful we can be that He gave us all of these wonderful, good things. So we got in the car, I smashed the kayak in the back through the back window. We drove to Weston Park, our drop-off location, pulled it off, threw the kayak in, and just a few moments later, we were there in the river on this an hour and a half float that was going to be just perfect. The sun beating down on that inflatable kayak. My arms so dead tired from doing all of the paddling. The kids whining that they would much rather be swimming than floating on a kayak. Well, I'll just put it this way. It didn't go exactly like I had hoped that it would go. And then I remembered my prayer from that morning and I froze. How am I supposed to talk about my faith now? It was a weird sensation. It was like I felt this obligation and responsibility, almost this pressure to fulfill my prayer from earlier. I didn't want it to feel forced. I wanted to build a home where faith is normal and honest and alive and not cliche or obligatory or routine. But it wasn't turning out how I expected, how I built the moment in my imagination. And maybe you have found yourself in similar places. Maybe you invested in something that you cared about really deeply, a passion, a skill, a career, your family, your children, your grandchildren, a future, a legacy. Maybe you were part of a project or a team or a dream of creating something new. Maybe you were a part of a church that was trying to build something beautiful. And in your imagination, you could almost see it in front of you. The moment was hotter than you expected, though. It was slower. It was messier. It was more tiring, with people not cooperating. And maybe there was a part of you that couldn't help but surface this question in the back of your mind. Is God still here? Is God still in this? But what if these slowdowns, these setbacks, these unexpected turns were invitations to look at things differently? Well, today we're taking a break between sermon series. Later after church, about 15 minutes after service today, we're going to be having our annual meeting. And so we're kind of in transition today. And with our annual meeting coming up, we're going to take a moment to talk about building a life, building a family, building a faith, building a church, building a future, building a legacy. And those are hopeful things. Because God made us to build. He invites us to invest ourselves in the things that matter, things that bless other people, and things that last beyond us. It's not just good for our hands to build, it's good for our souls to build. But here is where the tension comes in. When the thing that we're building doesn't unfold the way that we expect it to, it actually happens within us, inside of us. Sometimes we get anxious and we try to force the future and make it happen. Sometimes we reach for control or pressure or old patterns or whatever makes us feel safe in the midst of the unsettled moment. And so we may be building, but we are building with bricks that cannot bear the weight of the future that matters ahead of us. But the other danger is that we just stop building altogether. We decide that it's too slow, it's too messy, it's too uncertain, it's too costly. We may end up not just pulling out from the future we imagine, but we may end up pulling out from a future that has something more to offer us. And you know what's worse than losing out on a good future? It's losing out on a better future. So how do we keep building the future when the present shifts? Well, this is a question that has been echoing throughout the generations. It's gone back a long time. It reaches back to the days of troubled kings who ruled over Israel at the time when God raised up prophets to speak into the lives of the people of Israel, to call them back to the old ways again. And one of those prophets, his name was Elijah. Now, Elijah is very interesting. He's a prophet that stands out. He had no genealogy. He had no origin story. We don't really know where he comes from, but through Elisha, God did some of the most amazing things. Miracles like calling down fire from heaven, almost Jesus-like miracles like providing flour and oil that never ran out. He even raised a young man from the dead. Elijah was a standout. And around Elijah, there was this community of prophets that just wanted to hang around him. They wanted to learn from Elijah. They wanted to see what was going on. They were eager to see the next thing that God was going to do with Elijah. And there's one more important person to this story, and that's a farmer who was called to be a prophet, and his name was Elisha. I'm going to try to distinguish those today for you, Elisha. And Elisha was called to be Elijah's replacement. That's something that they both knew in advance. The moment was coming. And here in 2 Kings chapter 2, that moment finally comes. But it turns out that the community was not ready for this. Let's read. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I won't leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho. He replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know, he replied, so be quiet. Then Elijah said to him, stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So the two of them walked on. This is a special moment in Scripture. It's a sacred moment. It captures something that's timeless and emotional, really. On its face, it might seem a little bit strange. Here we have Elijah and Elisha and this community. They're making their way through key spots in Israel's history. One of the first places and locations that they entered into the promised land, the parting of the Jordan Sea with the conquest of Joshua. And then one of the first places where the tent of meeting was installed at Bethel, where people came and they met God. And perhaps this is unspoken by Elijah, but everyone knows that something is about to happen. Elijah is going to leave. He's going somewhere. Something is going to change. And this is important. We are never told why this is going to happen. We don't know whether, nothing is ever stated about his age, about Elijah's readiness or his health. And I want you to hold on to that, because later in the story, we're going to see that when he departs, the people are going to go back and they're going to look for Elijah. So hold on to that. Perhaps the nature of his departure was unclear. It was unbelievable, or maybe it even felt kind of unreal to the people, this prophetic community that's around them. But let's not skip this important point in what we just read. There is pain in this scene, as there is in so many departures that we have faced in our lives. The narrator slows things way down. 3 times Elijah tells Elisha that he's going to leave. 2 times this prophetic community says, don't you know what's going to happen? Like it's going to happen. And Elisha says, I know, I get it. 3 times Elisha says, no, I know this is difficult, but I must press on. I served as a kind of an interim college pastor for a short time in San Antonio, about 8 months. It was just kind of something that fell upon me and a season of transition for me. The college pastor had moved on to Houston to take a senior pastor job, and they were looking for somebody to just fill in the gap until they could find a permanent replacement who came about 8 months later. And I loved it. I just loved working with those kids, investing in them, learning their stories. And I'm in touch with some of them to this day. It was a long time ago, but what a blessing that was. Well, they eventually hired the permanent replacement. I was also kind of in a season of transition, like I had to move locations, so it was like, okay, this is clear that this season is over. And that was going to be hard because I really loved those kids. They were really close to my heart. And I remember it was in summer, it was the summer bash. There was somebody in the church that had a nice pool. So we kind of did this, end of the year summer pool party thing. The kids were outside, the college kids were outside jumping in the pool, having fun. And for whatever reason, I was inside talking with a homeowner. And I won't forget that moment in that space. It was, for whatever reason, that it was dark there. And I'm talking with this Interesting woman, and she's kind of, we're getting to know each other a little bit, and she said, eventually it came out that I was leaving, and I told her that my plan was to wait till basically the last day to tell them. Yeah, I know what some of you are thinking, and I thought that would be easier. And she gently called me out and said, that might be easier for you, but not necessarily for them. They need time to process this. They need time to think about it. They need some space to make it known. And it hit me. She was right. So I pivoted. And I told them earlier, I knew it wouldn't be easy to let it sit, to let it linger, to live in the awkwardness. I just wanted to rip the Band-Aid off for myself. But it wasn't about me. Not all pain is good to escape. And oh, how Elisha steps into that. He embodies it here. His mentor says, go, you can go. The community painfully, even with good intentions, reminds him of the difficult moment. Digging the knife in further, Elisha still stays. And that matters because the road of painful faithfulness is taking him somewhere. It's taking him to the Jordan, to the edge of something old, and to the edge of something new. This is how the story continues. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you? Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Elisha replied. You've asked a difficult thing, Elijah said. Yet if you see me when I'm taken from you, it'll be yours. Otherwise, it will not. As they were walking along and in talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and he tore it in two. Well, the sadness of this moment continues. That becomes loud when in that moment of grief, an act that would have been familiar with in ancient Israel, he tears his robes. Robes are costly. You don't have a lot of robes when you tear your robes. It's an emotional act. It's a big expression. And then Elijah departs, which makes this moment about the double portion kind of weird. At least it seems kind of weird. It's like saying to somebody that you know is in their final days, oh, and hey, by the way, would you mind if I had your priceless vinyl record collection? What's going on here? Well, it turns out that the double portion has deep roots in the Old Testament scriptures, in the Old Testament law. And yes, it is kind of what it sounds like. It's a double share, but the emphasis is not on that. In the Old Testament law, the double portion was given to the firstborn, the one who took leadership over. So Elisha is not asking to do twice as many miracles as Elijah did. He does miracles. We'll find that in the story, but even the scriptures don't show us that he did twice as many miracles. He's not so much asking to receive the mantle from Elijah either. He already knows he's going to receive that because the calling was earlier in this story. So it's not the miracles, it's not the mantle. He's simply being He's simply asking to be equipped to do what he's supposed to do. Elijah, if I'm going to do what you do, I need what you did to do it. And despite Elijah saying that it wasn't his to give, that's exactly what Elisha receives. Chariots of fire and horses of fire that fly by the two. It separates the two. Sometimes people read that as Elijah gets in the chariot and goes up, but that's not what's pictured here. There's a separation that occurs, and then Elijah goes up in the whirlwind, and then Elijah is gone. But did you notice what Elisha says after this? My father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel. He's calling Elijah the chariots and the horsemen of Israel. And let's not lose sight of that statement, because Elisha understands the symbolism of the chariots and horsemen as pointing to his mentor, not strength represented by military power and prowess, but strength represented by the office of the prophet, by God's spoken word, which is Israel's true defense and true protector, the word of God. Another prophet puts it this way: not by might, not by power, but by the Spirit, which is the true protection for Israel and is still the true protection for us. And friends, this is important to us, because sometimes a pivot in the present can redirect us from the future. It can. Our goals, our dreams, the things that we're planning for, and all of a sudden something shifts in our lives, and it's like, is this possible? And if you're like me, order is a place of comfort. A clear plan gives me a sense of peace, knowing where things are going to end up, where things are going. It paves a way for me. And maybe for you, your future is being built on the security of a career, the promise of marriage, hope of children and family, and the desire for a legacy. And I'll just be clear, those are good things. Those are blessings from God. Also, when they dominate and crowd out your true defense, we build our futures on shaky ground. But Elisha, he sees something different. He gives us the right eyes in this moment. He sees that the true chariots, the true horsemen are not those things, are not the things of power or prestige or future. And that's important, because not every strength can carry the future. Well, there's one more movement in this story, and it matters because the future is not built in the whirlwind. The future is built after the whirlwind. When Elisha has to go back to the Jordan and find out whether the God of Elijah will actually meet him there. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? He asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Look," they said, "we're your servants. We, your servants, have 50 able men. Let them go and look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has picked him up and set him down on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elisha replied, "do not send them." But they persisted until he was too embarrassed to refuse. So he said, "Send them." And they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days but did not find him. When they returned to Elisha, who was staying in Jericho, he said to them, "Didn't I tell you not to go?" Well, what a way to end this scene. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a letdown after this big power move, this big transition. At first, let's not miss the future that's being fulfilled right before the prophet's eyes. Elisha is crossing the Jordan by splitting it in two like his predecessor. And there's some deep history going on there because God through Moses split the Red Sea, and then Moses' successor, Joshua, when they were entering into the promised land, God split the Jordan through him. So you have another successor story repeating itself again. There's deep significance, but the significance is beyond just the history. It's the same God showing that he is still there, doing the same powerful things, even if it's through new people and new ways. Whether they got all the meaning or not, the prophets couldn't have missed the bigger point. Elisha was coming back in the same power that Elijah had. So they say the spirit of Elijah is resting upon you. But it's possible that when they say the spirit of Elijah, instead of the more direct spirit of God, that they're hinting that they're not quite ready to let Elijah go yet. They have not accepted the shift. That remark about the Spirit lifting up Elijah and maybe putting him on a mountain or throwing him in a valley, that might sound weird to us, but it turns out that there was another prophet who thought that the Spirit might carry Elijah away. So it wasn't such a weird concept to them. The point is not the strangeness of Elijah's departure. It's that they weren't prepared to let him go. They weren't ready for that. They were still holding on. And friends, the mission for us, it might be the same. The goal might continue before us. But sometimes the ways we get there, they change. They're delayed. Our vision around them might get bigger. It might be clarified. It might grow to be more robust, even sometimes more mature. And that matters because shifting expectations in our life, they're really hard. They make us question what we're building. They make us wonder if God is still working, or maybe if we were wrong in our thoughts and our impressions in the first place. They tempt us to lay the hammer aside. And then we go looking for the work of God in places where he's no longer active. Instead of picking up the mantle, we go searching in the hills. The path may change, the road may slow. But my friends, God is not done. The same God who parted the Jordan through Elijah is the same God who parted the Jordan on Elisha's return. And he can be the same God for us. Not necessarily through the same routines, not necessarily through the same strategies, not necessarily through the same rhythms or the same places, not necessarily even through the same people, but the same God. The mercy in this story, the mercy for Elisha and the mercy for us, is that on the other side of the Jordan, God still gives Elisha a place to grieve what he's about to lose and what he lost. That's really good. That's sacred. That's precious. But he also gives Elisha enough to step back over. Because wherever the story weaves, however it turns, God is more than enough. He's more than enough. And he can continue to be a part of our stories. When we let go of here, God will be with us there. I will remember the lupins. My wife, a few years ago, planted some lupin seeds and right along our hill. And there's something to see. I'm not a flower guy, but seeing these purple flowers break forth from the hillside, tall, royal, glorious, majestic. I even have to pause and just say, wow, that's cool. I have to slow down on my way in and out of the door because they're there begging for attention. But they weren't always there. My wife and I were talking a little bit about our kids, just, the challenges of, raising them to be the people that we want them to be. And she brought up the lupins. And it turns out it was like 4 years ago she planted those seeds with the hope that they would come up. And she tore into the side of the hill. She ripped out the grass so that light could trickle in and feed them. And the next year, they didn't come up. And the next year, they didn't come up. And the next year, they didn't come up. But finally, after 4 years, they showed up. My wife brought those up the other day in that conversation with the kids, how it was encouraging to her that we plant these seeds, we keep working, and it doesn't always show up as expected, but we keep working, we keep tilling, we keep planting. And I thought to myself, oh, that's great for a sermon. But I also took it as a personal invitation to keep building, to keep stepping, to not let the shape of my current expectations take my eyes off the prize. Maybe today, some of you are creating memories, are trying to create, are throwing yourself into creating memories that you used to enjoy. A mom trying to create a perfect world for your kids. A young man trying to run after the approval of your dad. A couple in counseling trying to go back to that joy that used to be. You want to go back, and that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Those aren't just memories. For many of us, those are God moments. Moments where God blessed us. Moments where we felt like God was active in a special way, doing something really precious, drawing our attention, feeding into our lives. Friends, is it possible that the God of Elijah is preparing us for better memories, a more certain approval, a more stable joy in whatever this season is giving you? And could he be doing something deeper inside of you too? Maybe for some of you, you have no clear memories of God working in your life. You have no place to start from. Perhaps some of you are here today exploring faith or re-exploring faith after a long time. Or maybe there are some of you here today who have just been doing this for a really long time without it feeling real for you. Could God be inviting you to make real memories for the first time? And could God be preparing us as a church, not necessarily for something more dramatic, although it could be, not necessarily for something more strategic, although it could be, but maybe for a steadier heart, to show up during the dull seasons, to press on in the midst of the hard questions, to be faithful and open-hearted to the amazing Spirit that is still at work today. Friends, I am seeing that at Christ Church more this past year than I've ever seen it in your lives, in the life of the church. Let's not allow it to be a moment. Let's allow it to be a movement. And let's allow him to carry us to places we have not seen. Back in that river, floating down in the heat, with worn muscles, that nasty kayak, I would have done things differently. I didn't push an agenda. I didn't say, like, kids, isn't this amazing? I didn't say, isn't it always wonderful to get out in God's creation? No, that wasn't the moment that we were finding ourselves in. But I think it could have gone a little more something like this. Kids, this is not what I expected today. But something that I am learning is that I can still find reasons to be grateful to God. I am grateful for you. And I can still look for courage to paddle on. That's the kind of faith, authentic faith, that I can pass down to my kids. And I hope that it will serve them well. And that's the kind of faith that could keep us building as kids, as parents, as grandparents, as couples, as single people, as a church. A faith that does not have to force the future into place. A faith that can grieve what is gone and receive what God gives and takes the next faithful step. So keep building, keep planting, keep paddling, keep crossing. Wherever that will lead, we'll find him. Let's pray.